Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at the collection that I chose for our collection management assignment, Travel Guides at Lethbridge Public Library's Crossings branch. Travel guides as a nonfiction genre have been around since the mid-17th century and have endured on until today. I thought to start off, we take a look at a description of a travel guide from the 17th century and then compare it against a description of a travel guide from today in the 21st century. The 17th century travel guide is described as having a tendency to swamp readers with information. The traveler would find in them a detailed description of the local sites, an exposition of the route to be followed, and assessments of the quality of the hostilities and food they would be likely to encounter on the way. Today's travel guides are much the same, being described as manuals expounding must-see sites, restaurants, and hotels. In them you'll find everything from descriptions of accommodations ranging from 5-star hotels to hostels that a college student might visit on a European vacation, a wide variety of restaurant reviews, descriptions of tourist sites such as art museums or the local theme park, a description of nightlife, and even shopping. There's basically something for everyone. Guides also include a wide variety of color photographs and a number of maps for tourists who are on the go. In first putting together my collection, I need to identify and narrow my focus. So I used 3 different criteria. The first was guides regarding individual experiences were excluded. So autobiographies, biographies, or memoirs detailing an individual's life while traveling through a specific locale were excluded. Second, only guides concerning destinations were included. So this included guides on individual cities, individual countries, or wider geographic locations composed of a variety of countries such as Western Europe or Eastern Europe, for example. Guides specializing in a particular type of travel, such as bicycling or rail travel, cruise ships, those were excluded, and niche tourism guides, such as tourism, were also excluded. My third criteria was to only include guides in a print or ebook format. Guides such as audiobooks, where travelers require additional equipment to use them, were excluded. I wanted to focus on guides that travelers could easily take with them as they traveled, and where information was quick and easy to access. In looking at the major influences on travel guides, the first major influence is Arthur Frommer's Europe on $5 a Day, which was the first major travel guide published in the 19th century and first appeared in the 1950s. Frommer focused on many of the criteria that you'll find in the modern-day travel guide, including accommodations, local sites, and restaurants. Overall, though, in the travel guide genre of nonfiction, much of the content is the same among the variety of guides you might find on a certain geographic location. According to industry publications such as Library Journal and Publishers Weekly, it's the travel guide publisher who makes the difference when it comes to quality and accuracy when it comes to travel guides. In some cases, the people writing the guides won't actually travel to the locations that they're describing, or in other cases, people live in the locations and write a detailed description of each location. Looking at the different publishers for travel guides, a ranking in Publishers Weekly published in 2016 listed Lonely Planet as the #1 travel guide amongst the different publishers, followed by other publishers including Frommer's, which is actually now only an ebook travel guide, Fodor's, Avalon, and DK. In managing my collection, I first needed to look at some deselection criteria to narrow down the number of items in my collection. So I focused on 3 different criteria: physical condition, currency, and circulation. In physical condition, I looked at how well different items had held up, whether they had damage to their spine, if their covers were rip and torn, just basic cleanliness. checking whether patrons had done a highlighting or any other marking inside the books. Overall, the physical condition was actually in pretty good condition, as I was able to physically go to the library and look at the collection rather than just looking at it online. There was a few books with damaged covers or tears that had to be withdrawn, but that was the full extent of damages that I found. The second criteria, currency, was the major concern in looking at the Crossings travel guide collections. Most of the guides in the collection were from 2010, from when the library had opened, and no subsequent editions had been purchased for the library. So in some cases, the information was greatly out of date, with not only a subsequent edition having been published, but in some cases there was 2 or even 3 editions that had come out after the edition that was located in the library, so much of the information was out of date. The third thing I looked at was circulation, and seeing which guides were actually being used. And guides that hadn't been used in the last year to 2 years, I chose to withdraw from the circulation. These factors go with the worst method as described by Johnson when you're looking at worn out, out of date, and rarely used items. For selection criteria, I looked at currency, the publisher, materials I could find in regional libraries, and customer demand. For currency, I made sure to buy the most up-to-date version of any of the guides that I could find. The majority of the guides I purchased were for 2000, that I selected were from 2017, and whenever possible, I used Lonely Planet as my publisher, having been identified by Publishers Weekly as the #1 travel guide publisher. In some cases, if material could be found in regional libraries, I tended to not select it for inclusion in my collection, as we were working with a limited budget of $600. And if I could save some money, even having items brought in through interlibrary loan, I would do that. And in customer demand, if there were some items, such as items in the Philippines, Cuba, Guatemala, which were identified in local travel sites, just as Kayak, as being #1 destinations for Canadian travelers that actually weren't in the collection, that I decided to select to add to the collection. As far as challenges go, the sheer number of titles that were out of date in the collection or had been replaced by new editions not included in the collection made things rather difficult, because my initial selection list was almost 3 times the amount of budget that I had to work with. So I had to select which titles to include. And a second or a third challenge was an inability to add ebooks to the collection. The Crossings uses a simultaneous use contract with Overdrive, limiting them to 25 new editions per year, which had already been utilized. That concludes my presentation. I look forward to hearing everybody's comments and questions in the forum. Thank you very much.